All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. I am making this video just before I leave Tennocon, so it's going to be a quick and dirty one. We're going to talk about the current state of Valkyr, who is the drop for Tennocon. So many of you are probably here because you want to know what to do with her now that you have her in her prime format, and maybe you want to know what to do with her in her new heirloom skin, which should be launching at Tennocon as well. Before that, before we get into anything, I do have 5 Tau Shards on Valkyr, which is quite a lot of investment. Good news, you need literally none of them in order to make her work. Yellow Shards, I have a parkour velocity, which is very unnecessary, especially once you get used to her 1. I probably will end up actually removing this shard and replacing it with something else, but it's kind of a flex slot. I have max energies filled on spawn. This is purely convenience. It does give you a ton of energy to start with in a mission. And then besides that, we have an equilibrium shard, which is good for energy economy, but it's just kind of bolstering what is already pretty good. And then we have the 2 damage increases here, which are going to be 37% melee critical damage, but that is doubled when max energy is over 500, and it always will be. So we are getting like a good 75% melee crit damage on both of these last 2 shards, which is a good little chunk of damage, but to be honest, anything that is within range of things that you should be fighting, honestly, even if the enemy has, like, you know, low 4 digits level, you don't need these. It's really not going to matter. This is more for funny number and not because you need the number. So all of these are really more of a wash. With that, let's talk about the current state of Valkyr. So Valkyr has lost her 4's invincibility. And for that, we need to give her a little bit of a boost. Thankfully, she does have a ton of armor, which we're using in a couple of different ways. But mainly, we're on Umbral Vitality. We just need a certain amount of just basic toughness. With what we're going to get out of our armor, we're starting at 76.9% DR. That's going to be increased significantly whenever we get our Warcry buff, which is then going to be multiplied by our Hysteria times 3. Giving us basically like a bit over 90% DR when all is said and done from armor. That's all well and good. We do have some additional survivability on top of that in the form of Augur Reach being here. This is, of course, going to make it so whenever we use energy, we get some shields back. This means that anytime we cast any of our abilities, and we do want to be casting fairly often with this build, we are going to get the shield gate back, which can protect us from specific hits. You can also go more in on shield gating if you want to take this build to much higher levels. Though I generally would not super suggest that, though much higher levels is meaning, like, you know, 1,000 plus normally. But this is more than enough for like regular content. If you're doing ETA, EDA, any of that kind of normal stuff, you should be a-okay. The ability to totally nullify damage on button press just from Augur Reach. Speaking of Augur Reach, it's also very important because ability range is quite important to this build, to the point that we're using all 4 of the ability range mods, getting us up to 280% range. Why am I doing that, you might ask? Well, it is pretty much entirely for Ripline. Ripline is not only a very good movement tool, which with this much range you can even use in like open worlds to go very, very quickly. It also is your kind of like AoE grouping tool to be able to clear groups relatively quickly. With this build, we are on a 25-meter radius for that, which means you can grab a lot of guys. Now, it is line of sight, which is tough, but of course, you know, there's nothing that pulls enemies through walls, so you're kind of dealing with that no matter what. But it is good for being able to just group up a whole room of enemies, kill them all, and then just move on, really greatly speeding up how fast Valkyr is going to go from room to room and from group to group and kill them all. Otherwise, we're on prime continuity mostly to offset some of the transient fortitude negative. It is worth noting that I have tried variants of this build where I have blind rage here. And then in this slot is usually something like adaptation. For higher levels that are going to have a lot more enemy density, that's actually totally fine. You can take the negative efficiency because there's going to be so many more enemies to be killing that you are going to make that energy back, especially with the equilibrium shard. But for more consistency, I think that this setup works fine, and the additional strength is not something you really particularly need. Otherwise, for strength, we are on just Umbral Intensify, 55% strength. Turns out is good. We are on Steel Charge. I do want to talk about this more, but it's going to be more important when we talk about the melee build, but we do have 60% base of melee damage. In terms of our arcanes, I'm on Arcane Battery. This is crucial because this is getting us over that 500 energy to turn on our purple shards, but also just having a ton of energy in general is great. This will also send us much higher and go to its like max whenever we use our 2 plus our 4. So we're going to have an insane amount of possible max energy. And then we're on just Molt Augmented. This is going to get us to 210% strength after our first 250 kills. And 210% strength is quite good whenever you're combining it alongside 280% range, which is normally quite difficult. Now, let's talk about the talents. First and foremost, I am on Naramon, so that's what's accounting for all of like the combo considerations on this build. This is going to give us basically infinite combo time is like what this is functionally doing. So we don't need a combo mod on our talents. If you're not using Naramon, you want a combo something somewhere, whether it is a couple of dexterity arcanes or whatever it is, you're going to want to do those, or you're going to want to have a mod on your talents that can do that for you. With that, this is what the build looks like. Shock and surprise, I know. It's a melee influence build. That just, it is what it is. Valkyr needs more AoE. This is way more AoE. Speaking of that, the flex slot in this build is kind of unusual. This is spring-loaded blade, and you'll notice we are missing a usually very present mod in the form of prime pressure point. So instead of prime pressure point, I'm running spring-loaded blade. This is because not only do we have the kind of base 60%, which is decent from steel charge, but Valkyr's new passive gives her melee damage, which is additive with pressure point, meaning we don't really need that stat in our build at all, and we're going with spring-loaded blade instead to give us a bit more range, as even with the updates to Hysteria's stance, her attacks can sometimes be a little bit stumpy, and the extra 2 meters of range on all of those attacks can help out quite a bit. And of course, the more enemies you're hitting and proccing influence, the more effective it is at clearing out groups. Of course, as I said, this is a flex slot, so you can swap it around. Everything else is pretty much just standard influence stuff. Like, you can swap out Voltaic in favor of like the other electric mod if you feel like you already have plenty of status, but it's all like little bitty changes in that way. For that, otherwise, nothing up here really matters. I mean, I have a Torrid, I have a Furus. They're both incredible weapons. You can use them. I am on the Praetos. This is just going to make me even faster, which is fine. Just kind of normal things up here. It is worth noting that your new passive, your meter over there that you can see on the right, whenever that is filled up, that is not nullifiable. So that will work even if you are filling it up with your regular melee. So having a decent melee that you can utilize in a pinch if you're like out of energy or something crazy like that is good to have, because that will fill up that meter and give you your kind of a chain invincibility. And it does also mean that you can open up the possibility for builds that totally remove Hysteria. But if you're going to do that, I would maybe suggest playing a different Warframe altogether. For that, we're spawning in the usual group, the level 230s. They're, you know, the full-on Orokin battle group with Steel Path modifiers, full level, all that good jazz. And we're just turning everything on. Pretty standard stuff here. Our 1 is, of course, going to group all these enemies up, and then we can just combo in, move up to the 300% melee damage pretty much instantly, proc everything, and kill everybody. Death Cube is, of course, helping here, but this is pretty much going to be your go-to for just shredding through groups, and at any level where the enemies just pretty much fold, which is going to be a lot of levels, all of ETA, all of EDA for the most part, as long as they are affected by possible crowd control, is going to group everything up, and you're just going to slash a couple times and take it all down. You will, of course, start like losing meter slowly, well, relatively slowly, but that can be built up really easily. I will note that I am on Tennocon and everything on this build, and the heavy attacks do hit quite hard, so it is like worth utilizing them. But the stance is unfortunately not in such a place where you normally want to be doing these basic attacks. You do still want to be spin attacking if you are like clearing out hallways full of enemies. Doing like constant spin attacks is going to be the best, not only forward movement, but also damage multipliers that you're going to be getting in Valkyr's stance. So that's what I would tend to tell you to go for. With that, let's jump in to some Kuva Fortress, just rooting around. Just gonna go through the normal stuff. I'm gonna do Valkyr things to it. Pretty much what you saw me do to these guys, I'm gonna do to everybody in the Kuva Fortress. All right, Kuva Fortress. We are jumping in. This should be like a relatively chill time. I will say that this is one of the things where part of like the big convenience of Valkyr is starting with this much energy, starting with the 300 some energy, really makes getting started as Valkyr very, very easy. And that is due to the yellow shard that I do have. Otherwise, of course, you can always drop an energy pad or whatnot, though I find that to be kind of annoying at the beginning of a mission. It is also really simple to do. Yeah, so just starting off, you can see our like melee get up there real quick. Just rolling some spin attacks, getting some murder going. And as usual, like, I mean, like, we are basically just using a very good melee weapon, of course, in the form of R4 in terms of it, like, you know, it has infinite follow-through. So, like, we're not losing damage from target to target, so which that also makes the extra range much better than it would be on a lot of, like, more regular weapons that you might be using. Makes it, like, you know, closer to something like the Nami Solo, as that is a weapon that is on par with Exalted's in a lot of ways because of that follow-through stat. But, like, we can really get in here. This is a much more, like, regular level of enemy. You can see that with our 2-up and our 4-up, I didn't mention we're on an Eternal War, but we never need to, like, turn our 2 back on ever again. But we are on 1200 energy, basically, which is pretty effective. 1200 energy gets us pretty far. Means that we can stay in our 4 a very, very long time. I will say this is one of the cases where, like, if you are just doing, like, a solo survival or something, you should be able to keep on, like, you know, keep up with your energy economy, especially whenever you have this much total capacity for energy, especially whenever we're alongside Nourish, replacing our 3, because we don't really need our 3 for anything, because our 1 is doing all of the grouping jobs, and crowd control and, you know, movement that we might want, especially in more open tile sets. So we don't need our 3, we're on Nourish, so that can fill our energy up really fast in a pinch, especially if we kind of like know we're about to hit a bunch of energy, you can cast it real quick and just drop it off. But this is a case where, like, I could be definitely getting away with Blind Rage. I did want to show it at, like, the lower strength level to show that it's, like, still very, very good. And this is also, like, not a level, like, this is, of course, like, base Steel Path, but this is not a level where you're going to, like, need adaptation. Adaptation's not going to come into play below usually level 300, I would say. Which is what I might have over the continuity slot, as I mentioned whenever we were talking about the build. Yeah, 2 minutes in, we are at 300 kills, which is nice. Should be, like, what you would expect and want. I am trying to, like, not use the slide attacks as much, because I know that is a real pain for people to do in a lot of cases. Especially if you are on console or something, it's the, you know, you can't just set up, like, you know, the hit both these buttons at once, like, kind of repeat macro style stuff you can do on PC very easily. But even if you're using just, like, the basic attacks, you can get quite a bit going. Like, you'll be fine. Like, for regular content, everything is a-okay. Now, I do want to note, and this is some stuff that I talked about whenever I previewed this on the dev build, all of the stuff that I said pretty much still rings true. The 1 was more worth it to build around with the range increases that they did give this. Since I used it on the dev build, I do think that the 25 is, like, kind of just barely making the cut. You do kind of have to go all out on range to, like, make it happen. But it is, like, worth having in the build. If you don't like utilizing it, you can just forego it, and that gives you a lot more room to do a lot of different things, way more tanking capability, opens up slots for adaptation, things like that. You'll get more strength naturally by dropping overextended. So if you don't really care about the range, dropping all that stuff gives you the ability to hit much, much harder, and especially in terms of, like, the single target direction. If you're, like, not planning on using influence for whatever reason, then you can get into, like, you know, the high millions, more Atlas-like numbers. So if you're just, like, looking for, like, a number hunting where you just want to spin through groups and see millions pop up, that is also a place that you could take this, though that build is just generally going to perform worse. And right now we're in a situation where pretty much all of the enemies that, like, can take a hit, they take a hit because attenuation is a thing. And whenever that's the case, attenuated enemies, you know, they equalize your damage anyway. They're not going to take any of the damage that you're building for. So therefore, building for more AoE influence is always going to be the thing that you're doing. It's also why Spring-Loaded Blade is on here in large part. And it's just good stuff all the way up until you get to the point where Valkyr stops surviving. Thankfully, that's a good chunk of the way into Steel Path. That's going to be, like, you know, reserved for places like Circuit, reserved for places like Steel Path Cascade, where, like, you could have taken Valkyr before and had a pretty decent time. Now, like, you know, you're not literally invincible, which was the crux of using her in those places before to great effect. Though, of course, in Circuit, if you get the right decrees, you can get away with a lot, especially the, like, on melee kill, get overguard stuff. You can get away with quite a bit in a lot of places, especially if you're prepared to get away with quite a bit. And, of course, shield gating is always an option. Though I think that, like, you know, anyone saying that that should be what you're doing as Valkyr is kind of just admitting that health and armor is just not even close to good enough for high level content whenever you get into doing that business, which is a whole nother problem I've discussed pretty much at length on its own. But yeah, that's kind of what's up. Where are the Acolytes is my first question. Like, first and foremost, my initial question is, where are the Acolytes? Also, I did a, like, bad heavy attack there, but they did also bolster up, since I talked about this on the dev. Now your, like, kind of main attacks build a bit more combo, which does make it a bit easier to get, like, you know, back in on being all comboed up and everything. But you'll be able to, you know, the Acolytes aren't going to be able to do much about this, even if I'm at, like, 4x combo here. You're just getting, like, you know, those nice Tennocon heavy attacks in, and it's pretty much a wash for them. Like, you're not doing Baruch numbers. Like, I'm not going to be hitting enemies for, you know, 60 million damage or anything like that. But Baruch is doing those numbers for laughs, not for serious. So, kind of a bit of a neither here nor there. In terms of the slide attacking stuff, of course, you can see here it is extremely potent, and you will just, you know, not only are the damage numbers going to be higher, you're just going to be able to move really fast through the map, which is, of course, always going to be very good. Yeah, so just really able to chop it down and just, like, you know, do crazy influence things. It hits multiple times. It's a higher modifier. Just the works in terms of the spin attacking. If you hit enemies with the actual uppercut part, you can see, like, an 800,000 there. It's just better. Like, it's just better, except for it's kind of annoying that it's the better way to play. I would really love it if there, you know, had been more direct damage in, like, her standing still combos, for example. Or something of that nature to make it so that spin attacking wasn't pretty much just always the way if you were able to dish out the numbers. Though, thankfully, because of Tennocon, you can also very much justify just, like, getting into your heavy attacks and slamming those down. It's also, I think, still pretty reasonable if you don't want to be sliding all the time. You certainly don't have to be, which is the state that I would say it would be in before the rework. Still wish there had maybe been a little bit more done to her stance in general with the changes. But yeah, it's, like, pretty standard stuff. We're at, like, you know, almost 8 minutes here. We're at 900 kills, which is, hey, good melee weapon doing influence things. That's, like, what we've come to expect. If it wasn't doing that, it would be kind of like an abject failure, I would say, which would be bad. There's a nice 6 million. I believe that was a headshot for our heavy. Which, hey, fun fact for those that don't know, yeah, melee attacks, they totally can headshot. So, like, the angle at which the melee attack comes down, like, does actually kind of matter. Yeah, having, like, the huge swiping claws with, like, the extra range from spring-loaded definitely makes this, like, much comfier to use in the vast majority of tile sets. You can be, like, more in, like, the center of a room and still hit those edges. Just, like, more convenient in general. And, of course, we do have our get out of jail free card because we are at, like, the 300% melee damage. Anytime you are most of the way filled up on that, you are functionally invincible. You'll have to make sure you keep recharging that, but that's, like, kind of a thing to layer underneath shield gating at higher levels that can continue to keep you alive whenever you just need it to be slapping dudes. It did just burn my combo again, unfortunately, but that's not a tremendous deal. They did patch that up, I think, pretty reasonably with the increased combo gains on her stance in general. Was worried it wouldn't be quite enough, but you do get back up into, like, the nice mid combos where things start coming back together again pretty quickly. And, of course, the tougher the enemies are, whenever they actually start surviving, it's even faster than that, because they will actually be alive for you to build combo on them. For an enemy like this who is just invincible, you can build combo on them, like, fairly quickly. It's kind of like a litmus test for that increased combo gain. You can see it's pretty decent. I'm just coming in here to trash some enemies through as we get to our 10-minute mark. But yeah, I am at Tennocon. Like, as of this video being up, I'm there. So you should come hang out and watch the streams. I'm on the IRL backpack doing IRL stuff in the Canadas, which should be a great time. It was a fantastic time last year. Here's Violence. Hopefully Violence just dies. There we go. Did not get to turn off our 4, which is always brutal. They were at 10 minutes there. 1,125 kills. Not bad at all. Just doing good. There's a 30 million. Quite nice. That one must have been a headshot. That was actually very much closer to Atlas numbers, which is a bit more rare to see. But yeah, that's what's going on with Valkyr. She's in a good state. She's getting an heirloom. People are getting her for free from the Tennocon drops and stuff. So I imagine people want to build her. And if you enjoy her playstyle, then good stuff. I think that like more people will enjoy her abilities being better in the ways that they are, then people are generally going to really lose out at taking her to like extremely high levels. So overall, her rework is worse in ways that I think matter less than Valkyr being more fun right now. And that's just fine. Yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Hopefully you're enjoying the Tennocon stuff. And I'll see you there if you're going, and I'll see you on stream if you're not. So ends today's video. Thanks so much to all of the patrons for supporting not only this channel, but also the new Soulframe Scholar channel. It is much appreciated as that channel gets started. And thanks very much to our $10 patrons, Atheon, Ith, Albrin Drake, Alex Parnham, Arbiter Daydream, Babyhoot, Arcus, Nuven, Automatic, Brutus Salazar, Canolathra, Bob World, Colleen Smith, Dylan Dworsky, Athrain, James Hawthorne, GC4 Science, Josh, Lord Ian, Luzanth, Mike Easman, Mikkel, Michta, Nerve, Ruby, S267, Sanyu, Cezon, Sharp247, The Coupon of Death, Waifu Wars, Waldetto1, Seraphir, and Zero Weebs Plan, and of course all of the $5 and $2 patrons as well. Your support is very much appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.